The derelict spaceship Eclipse drifted silently through the void, its hull pockmarked with battle scars and its corridors steeped in darkness. Once a proud vessel of the Weyland-Yutani Corporation, it had been abandoned decades ago after a catastrophic outbreak, one that not even the company's ruthless bioweapons division could contain. Now it was a tomb, a floating graveyard where two horrors waged an endless war. Deep within the ship's bowels, something stirred. A xenomorph, sleek, black, and dripping with saliva, crouched in the shadows, its elongated head twitching as it listened. The hive had been thriving, expanding, but something was wrong. The drones had been disappearing. Not killed in the usual ways. No acid burns, no signs of human interference, just gone. The hive mind whispered unease. Then the scent hit it. Rot, decay, death. The xenomorph hissed, its inner jaws flexing in anticipation of a fight. It moved silently through the vents, claws clicking against the metal. Below, in a dimly lit corridor, a figure shambled. A zombie. Its flesh was gray and peeling, its eyes milky white. It groaned, its jaw hanging slack, strings of blackened saliva dripping from its lips. It had once been a crew member, but now it was nothing more than a vessel for the infection that had ravaged the ship. The xenomorph dropped from the ceiling, landing behind the undead creature with predatory grace. Before the zombie could react, the xenomorph's tail lashed out, impaling it through the chest. The zombie staggered but did not fall. It turned, its dead eyes locking onto the alien, and let out a guttural moan. Then it lunged. The xenomorph recoiled in surprise. Prey wasn't supposed to fight back like this. The zombie clawed at it, teeth snapping, fingers grasping. The alien struck again, this time severing the zombie's head with a swift slash of its claws. The body crumpled, but the head continued to gnash its teeth, the infection refusing to let it die. The xenomorph tilted its head, studying the twitching skull. Then it crushed it beneath its foot. But the sound had drawn more. From the darkness, dozens of zombies emerged, their groans filling the corridor. Some were fresh, their wounds still bleeding black ichor. Others were skeletal, barely held together by rotting sinew. They moved with single-minded hunger, drawn to the living, or in this case, the closest thing to it. The xenomorph hissed, its instincts screaming that these creatures were wrong. They did not fear. They did not flee. They did not stop. It attacked. Acid blood sprayed as the alien tore through the horde, limbs flying, heads rolling. But for every one it killed, two more took its place. A zombie latched onto its arm, biting down hard. The xenomorph snarled and ripped it away, but the damage was done. The infection was spreading. The hive mind pulsed with alarm. The drones felt it too. Their perfect organism was being corrupted. Deep within the ship, the queen stirred. She sensed the threat. These walking corpses were not prey, they were invaders. And they would not stop until every last drop of life was extinguished. A battle cry echoed through the halls as the xenomorphs rallied. Warriors, drones, even the facehuggers joined the fray, leaping onto zombies, implanting them with embryos that would never gestate. The dead could not host new life. The zombies, mindless and relentless, pressed forward. They did not feel pain. They did not know fear. They only knew hunger. The two horrors clashed in a storm of teeth, claws, and acid. The ship trembled under the force of their war. Walls were torn open, vents collapsed, and the Eclipse groaned under the strain. Then silence. The last xenomorph stood amidst a mountain of corpses, its body broken, its blood burning through the floor. The last zombie, half its face melted away, reached for it. The alien struck. Both fell. The ship was still. But in the darkness, something twitched. A facehugger, wounded but alive, skittered across the floor toward a fresh corpse, one not yet consumed by the infection. The cycle would begin again, and the battle would never end. Silence never lasted long aboard the Eclipse. The facehugger latched onto the dead human's face, its fingers tightening around the skull as its ovipositor forced its way down the throat. The body convulsed once, then stilled. The parasite detached, its work done, and scuttled away into the shadows, just as the first tremors of rebirth began. Deep in the ship's wrecked corridors, the hive stirred anew. The queen, sensing the presence of fresh genetic material, let out a low, reverberating hiss. The remaining xenomorphs, scattered and wounded but still alive, regrouped in the darkness. They had learned. The dead were not food, they were enemies, and enemies had to be eradicated. Meanwhile, the infection spread. The zombie virus cared nothing for logic, nothing for strategy. It only consumed. The fallen xenomorphs, their acidic blood having melted through their attackers, now lay in pools of their own corrosive fluids. But some of the undead had survived. Their bodies, though maimed, still twitched with unnatural life. And where there was flesh, the virus thrived. A severed zombie arm, lying in a puddle of blackened gore, twitched. The fingers clawed at the floor, dragging itself forward inch by inch. Nearby, a disembodied head rolled, its milky eyes staring blankly as its jaws snapped at the air. The virus was relentless. It did not need a brain, a heart, or even a full body, just a single cell was enough to spread. And then movement. The chest of the human host, the one implanted by the facehugger, burst open. A newborn xenomorph, slick with blood and amniotic fluid, screeched into the darkness. It was smaller than the others, its exoskeleton not yet hardened. But it was alive. And it was hungry. It tasted the air with its tongue, sensing the rot, the decay, the wrongness of the undead. Instinct told it to kill. The first zombie it encountered was little more than a torso dragging itself along the floor. The xenomorph lunged, claws slicing through the rotting flesh. Acid sprayed as the zombie's body split apart, but the creature did not die. Its remaining arm lashed out, grasping at the young alien. The xenomorph shrieked and tore it to pieces, but the damage was done. The virus was inside it now. The hive mind shivered in revulsion. The queen, sensing the corruption in her brood, let out a furious scream. This could not be allowed. The xenomorphs were perfect, unalterable, but the infection was rewriting them, twisting them into something else, something worse. The infected xenomorph convulsed, its black carapace bubbling as the virus took hold. Its limbs twitched unnaturally, its movements becoming jerky, uncoordinated. And then it turned on its own kind. The hive erupted into chaos. Xenomorphs fought each other, their once unified instincts now shattered. The infected ones were slower, clumsier, but they did not stop. They did not feel pain. They did not retreat. They only spread the corruption. The queen, realizing the danger, did the only thing she could. She abandoned the ship. With a final, echoing screech, she tore her way through the hull, acid melting through the metal as she escaped into the void. The remaining xenomorphs, those still pure, followed, fleeing the nightmare their home had become. Behind them, the Eclipse drifted, its halls now filled with something new, something hungry. The infected xenomorphs, their bodies warped by the virus, shambled through the corridors. They were neither fully xenomorph nor fully zombie. They were something in between. Faster than the undead, deadlier than the infected. They were the perfect fusion of two horrors. And they were evolving. The ship's distress beacon, long dormant, suddenly flickered to life. A signal pulsed into the void, a call for help, or a warning. Somewhere, in the vast emptiness of space, Another ship picked up the transmission, and the cycle began anew.